Model citizens. Al Larson, star slugger for the Leicestershire Lips, was slumped over in the home team dugout, scratching feverishly at his skin. An insistent itching rash had appeared on his chest during the first inning, growing increasingly more persistent as the game progressed, to the point where it had become unbearable. It got so bad that the coach had to bench Al in the fourth inning after he misplayed an easy pop fly and cost the team a crucial run. "Damn, Larson," said Chuck Teague, the hitting coach, taken aback by the nasty rash that had formed on Al's forehead. "What happened? You run into some poison ivy along the third baseline? It's the darndest thing. Just started out of nowhere like I slid headfirst over sandpaper." Al dug his nails into his skin, trying to manage whatever relief he could, however momentary. He pulled the front of his jersey down to reveal that his chest was red as well. "It's all over too. The front of my legs, arms. I'm not sure how much more I can take, to be honest. Let me go get you some of that ointment that Lefty's always using." But by the time Chuck returned, Al was already rolling in the dirt, yowling in pain. Frantically, Al ran his hands all over his body as if it were crawling with fire ants. His concerned and perplexed teammates stood in a semicircle around him. Several personnel rushed into the dugout to see him while Chuck phoned the nearby firehouse. Not 10 minutes later, a fire truck pulled onto the field. Hundreds of fans had remained in the stands, curious as to what had happened to end the game an inning early. The emergency medical crew rushed to the dugout and looked over the star ball player. "Gosh, Mr. Larson, did you collide with Tris Peak in the gap or something?" said Tommy Chance, the youngest man on the fire crew. Al only rasped and groaned in response. Chuck stepped forward to point out the rash on the man's chest. "He's been itching all game, son. We haven't got the foggiest what happened," said Chuck. "Lefty's special ointment didn't do much for him. I guess it's better suited for spitters and cut fastballs." "Let's get him on the stretcher, Tommy. He's going to Memorial," said Tommy's partner Dick Furch. Al lay on a bed in the emergency room of the local hospital, his skin raw and tender. He couldn't quite grasp it, how the rash and the itching had come so abruptly. He had heard of guys coming down with issues after spending a little too much time with the baseball handies, but never in his life had he seen or felt anything like his current predicament. The nurses covered him with ice packs to try and stifle his desire to itch as he waited. A half hour or so later, a man in a white coat walked into the room. He looked closer to 50, with silver hair and pallid skin, and he carried himself with the air of someone who commanded respect. "Good afternoon, Mr. Larson. I'm Dr. Drummond. I'll be taking care of you today." Drummond was the head of the ER. It's not often we get a star ball player in our midst. You led the team in home runs last year, is that right? "Hello," said Al weakly. "Yes." "Impressive." The doctor examines Al's face. "Can you tell me when this rash began to develop?" "Just this afternoon, Doc. One minute I was fine, standing there listening to the national anthem, and the next my skin feels like it's on fire, and my face and chest are red as hell." Al paused and realized he had ceased itching. "And now it's as if it never happened." "You haven't come into contact with any exotic plants lately?" "No, Christ, these ice packs really did the trick." "Did you ingest anything out of the ordinary? What did you eat in the last 24 hours? "Eggs, bacon, a turkey sub, tobacco, chewing gum, seeds, dozen bananas, a couple beers. And you say your skin went from normal to beet red in a matter of minutes?" Al nodded. Dr. Drummond paused. "I see. So what's wrong with me, Doc?" The conversation was broken by a ruckus in the hallway. A stretcher was wheeled into the room, on which lay Tommy Chance, the young firefighter that had assisted Al not an hour before. Tommy was struggling to breathe, and his skin had turned a deep, distressing blue. The medics that wheeled him in and attempted various resuscitative methods, which seemed to work as Tommy eventually came to. There was a moment of relief before Tommy began to gasp for air again. Al watched, amazed, as Tommy began to spit and vomit up water, gushing out of his mouth as if a rushing tide had formed in his throat. This spectacle subsided after another minute, and Tommy lay on the bed, breathing easier. Was this man pulled from the river? Asked Dr. Drummond. No, Doc, this is my partner, Tommy Chance. We were all just sitting at the card table back at the firehouse not 10 minutes ago, and he began to turn purple and flail around, replied Dr. Furch. Dr. Drummond put his stethoscope to Tommy's chest and back and listened. Tommy, have you been swimming in the past 24 hours? There is such a thing as delayed drowning. No, Doc, said Tommy breathlessly. Well, your lungs seem clear. We'll get you an x-ray just to make sure. Back out to the waiting area. He stood between Tommy and Al's beds and addressed them both. Gentlemen, I don't need to tell you that you're both presenting with some very curious symptoms. In the past month, a number of men have come in with severe complications and then miraculously recovered before we could diagnose them. A police officer with severe impact trauma from just sitting at his desk. The elementary principal having broken both of his arms during an afternoon nap. Our very own mayor passing blood out of every orifice. The doctor paused, considering how crazy it all sounded, and he had witnessed it. I think there might be a commonality between you and Tommy are experiencing. This might sound odd, but hear me out. Al looked at the doctor incredulously, then over to Tommy, who bore a similarly perplexed look upon his still blue face. Doc, said Al, I don't understand. You think me and Tommy's maladies have something to do with each other? Sure, he helped me out on the ball field. Thanks for that, pal, he said, addressing Tommy, who nodded back. But other than that, we're practically strangers. You've got more in common than you know, said Dr. Drummond. The two of you should come with me to Mr. Lester's house, up on the hill. I really believe he can help us out on this one. He's a personal friend. How's Lester going to help out my rash, Doc? I don't think you can just throw money at this problem. Let me talk to. Al stopped as another wave of heavy itching abruptly returned. It was spreading rapidly. Meanwhile, Tommy looked on, fearful he would again begin coughing up water. You sure you don't want my help? Said Dr. Drummond. Tommy spoke up. Mr. Larson, I really think we should listen to the doc and go up to the big house. Al relented, while Dr. Drummond made arrangements for a car to meet the three men out in front of the hospital. The car arrived at the Sunshire Chateau, the Lester family home, 15 minutes later. The Sunshire overlooked the valley and village of Leicestershire, the town the Lester family had founded and built up through farming and then boot manufacturing. It was an impressive structure, one which every citizen in the valley was familiar. You couldn't miss it if you simply looked north from Main Street. Mr. Lester was powerful, but Al was certain Lester's abilities did not extend to curing mysterious illnesses. I treated the Lester family my entire career. He'll hear me out, said Dr. Drummond, as the trio headed to the front door of the red brick mansion. Al and Tommy looked at each other quizzically, curious of what the doctor wasn't sharing. They knocked and a maid answered, recognizing the doctor and inviting the men inside to wait. May I ask the reason for which you are calling, doctor? Mr. Lester has been very busy, said the maid. Tell him Al Larson won't be able to play in the series against the Scranton Miners this weekend, stated the doctor. That should do the trick. The maid nodded and headed down a hallway while the trio of men looked around the grand entranceway and main receiving hall of the chateau. An ornate maroon and white rug covered what they could see of the ground level of the home. Turn-of-the-century chairs and sofas decorated the vast room. What's up, buddy? Tommy called out to a boy of about 8 years old, who had been watching through a railing from the second floor. The young boy laughed and ran out of sight. Meanwhile, the maid had returned to take the men back to Mr. Lester's private office. Al, goddammit, what's wrong now? You need a bigger bonus? Said Mr. Lester as he stood behind his cluttered desk. Drummond, don't tell me he's got bone spurs or something. No, Mr. Lester, my pay is fine. It's this rash. The doctor cut off Al. Mr. Lester, this is Tommy Chance. He's one of the firefighters who saved the carousel from burning down over the winter. A real hero. Yes, nice to meet you, Tommy. Thank you for your service. Lester queried Tommy and Al about their respective businesses while the doctor went silent. The ball player and fireman told him of their sudden illnesses and miraculous recoveries. The men only noticed the doctor's strange contorting limbs when he knocked into Lester's large globe humidor. Drummond, what the hell are you doing? The doctor had a blank look on his face as he spasmed and his limbs seemed to move at unnatural angles. Al winced at what sounded like Drummond's ligaments stretching and popping beneath his skin and watched aghast as the doctor's arms and legs twisted at the joints. He thought he had witnessed the absolute limit of the human body's pliability when the doctor's torso suddenly bent backwards in an obscene angle. Without explanation, the spectacle ceased, and Drummond ran out of the office and down the hall. Al and Tommy stood silently, mouths agape, shocked at the extraordinary scene they had just witnessed. They looked to Mr. Lester for answers. "Oh, Lord, not again. I'm going to strangle that goddamn nanny." Lester stormed out a second door, leaving a stunned Al and Tommy to question the sanity of the other two men. "What's going on here, Al?" asked Tommy, still somewhat raspy from the trauma he had endured earlier. Al didn't respond until a man's scream shook him from his daze. The pair ran back down the hall and out into the entranceway. "That sounded like the doc," stated Tommy, as the men paused to listen. Again, a man's fearful call resounded. "Upstairs, let's go," said Al. The ball player and the firefighter ran up the stairs and down the hall, peering in room after room of the long corridor, searching for Dr. Drummond. Finally, Al opened a bedroom door and found the good doctor. "Tommy, he's in here, come on." The two men stormed into the room and didn't know what to make of the scene. Dr. Drummond was standing stock still in front of an open window, while the young boy they had seen earlier played with his dolls on the floor. There was a fat man with pins stuck in his belly wearing Mayor Pekoski's distinctive decorated sash. A policeman that Tommy instantly recognized as Detective Burnett by his bright red hair, run over by a police car, a fireman standing in a glass of water, and a baseball player wearing a jersey with the name Larson stitched on the back, sliding face down on the rough Berber carpet. "You son of a," said Al, seeing that the boy was about to push his white coat doctor figure out of the second floor window of his replica Sunshire Chateau dollhouse. "Put that down!" Before the boy could respond, Al swiftly grabbed him and knocked the doll out of his hand. Dr. Drummond simultaneously collapsed next to the window. Tommy retrieved the policeman and firefighter from their precarious situations and carefully pulled each pin from the mayor's big belly. He held his double and the other notable men protectively, staring daggers at the young boy. "Let me go, Mr. Larson," yelped the boy. Al released the kid and cuffed him on the back of the head. "Jonah, what you were doing with these dolls was very wrong," stated Dr. Drummond, who had slowly risen on sore, shaky legs. The boy abashedly collected some of his unexceptional toys as the men chastised him. He then scampered out of the room, cackling to himself that his nanny, Miss Manushka, would just have to make him more of his favorite dolls.